Good evening, TC.
Good evening, Gabby.
Good evening, all, and welcome to our weekly podcast, Terry Curran's A Curran View with the Idol of Hillsborough, Mr. Terry Curran. And if you're listening to the free first half on either Acast or Spotify, you can follow the links on our socials and access the full podcast via either Apple or become a Patreon, all the w's.patreon.com/SRBmedia. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at Curran View or on Facebook, The Curran View, or join the group, which is over 3,000 members strong. Thank you so much for your support. It's greatly appreciated. Steady away, mate.
Yep, steady away like you keep saying every week.
And how's things? You okay? You had a decent week?
Yeah, not too bad. Obviously, World Cup started. I really can't get into it, if I'm honest.
Okay.
Not because where it's played at and all the rigmaroles, with how Qatar got the World Cup, but the wokeness of it, the coverage of everything, and I just can't get into all that side of it.
Well, magic moments, TC. Have you sourced anything for us this week? You're sounding a little bit distant, see? Are you doing?
No.
Are you doing the pots and pans?
No, I did all that an hour and a half ago. What had happened? I plugged my phone in and I didn't switch it on for charging. So if it sounds a bit distant, it's because it's plugged in because I'm on very little charge. So that's why I might sound a bit distant.
No.
My magic moment.
Yep.
Obviously, it's only been a couple of games so far. Would be Graham Souness and Roy Keane. I thought that was brilliant. But no, goal-wise, I'm going for the Saudis against Argentinian today.
Superb.
England scored a couple of great goals, but I'm going for that. Al-Dazari, his second goal against Argentina, came inside, bent it into top corner, and the first shock of the tournament. There's always a shock, as you know.
Absolutely. It was a cracking strike. I've looked at a couple. I wanted to have a look because we didn't do a podcast last week, but Danny Rose, his behind you goal for Stevenage against Hartlepool United. It used to be, of course, when Brian and Peter had it, Hartlepool United, but the two merged and there's no S on the end. Have you ever been involved in a mad goal like that where the goalkeeper rolls the ball out and the player's hiding round the post and he looked as though he was actually off the pitch, but he was in the goals? Does that still count as on the pitch? Because if he was the other side of the goal and he's off the pitch, doesn't he need referee's permission to enter the field of play? I'm not too sure about that.
I'm not sure if that's when you've fouled and you roll off at pitch.
Yeah.
I think you need that. But I mean, if you run off at pitch, you can come back on. I'm sure you can come back on. But when you say hiding, the goalkeeper, regardless of what anyone tells me, the goalkeeper knows he's gone past him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And now I remember George Best when Gordon Banks threw the ball out of his hands. That should have really been a goal because the ball's left his hands.
Yep.
But when you roll the ball down, you know that player's gone past. You should always be having a look to see where that player is. Because I've seen that. I think that's about the third one now I have seen of that. The one at Nottingham Forest, I know the one. I'm trying to think where's the other. I've definitely seen three of those.
I think Robbie Keane done it against Birmingham, if memory serves me right. And
I think you're right there. Yes, you're right there.
Yeah.
He's definitely done it. But there was somebody did it at Forest and all Nottingham Forest.
And while we're talking about George Best and the infamous where Gordon Banks, I think it was 1971, wasn't it? And Gordon had thrown the ball up and George headed the ball while the ball was in the air, not in Gordon Banks's hands. They didn't know what to do and they disallowed the goal. But didn't Gary Crosby do something similar for Nottingham Forest?
That's the one. Same thing. No, the keeper put it down and he came from behind him. That's what it was.
Yeah.
You know, that's the third one I've seen that same type of thing.
And also Tim Weir's goal last night for USA against Wales. I didn't realise, I knew he was related to Georgie Weah, but I didn't realise he was the son of George. I thought the Americans started out for the first half. I thought they were superb. I thought they were fast. I thought they were furious. I thought they looked slick. They just looked like a proper team. And I thought, oi, oi, what's going on here? And I thought the way he took his goal was sublime.
I thought, if I'm honest, I fancied the USA to beat America. I really did.
Wales.
Yeah.
Yeah.
America to beat Wales.
Yeah.
I really did. But like you said, the first half, the Americans absolutely battered them.
Yeah.
And Americans have done something that you don't expect them to do. Tire and fake. Because they're like the Australian rugby players, always physically fit, always come on strong towards it, you know, because they do work on the physical fitness side of it, does the Americans. And they're tired. But having said that, that first half, and anybody who's not played football in those countries, and I've played in Iran and Iraq and Kuwait football, the heat is unbelievable. And what they did, the Americans, like Manchester City do, the press, they try and win the ball, the press high and try to win the ball back quickly. Yeah. And it takes some doing in heat. So you can understand them or feel for them that they did tire. But finished up a great result for pair of them, because at the end of the day, I'm like you, I want to see Uddy's lad do well, but I still want to see Wales do well and all.
Yeah, absolutely. Sadly, only two can qualify from a group. We're obviously hoping that England qualify, and I would prefer, had America not been in there, I would have liked England and Wales, but because Anthony is one of the coaches, I do want America to qualify with England. And finally, Jack Grealish's goal celebration for Finlay. There's been quite a bit on social media with young Finlay. He's a lad that's got cerebral palsy, and he wrote to Jack Grealish, and Jack met him, and he said, if I score a goal, I'll do the goal celebration for you, Finlay. And lots of people, when that sixth goal went in, must have thought, what the hell is Jack Grealish doing? But the goal celebration was for Finlay. And there's a lovely piece on the England football team's Facebook page where Jack's phoned him up tonight, and he's talking to young Finlay. It's made his day. And that's what football is all about. I did post up on my socials yesterday, you know, it was a great day for Birmingham because both Jude and Jack scored. And I did say, as a former manager of the Central Warwick's Football League, which is a big league here in Birmingham and the West Midlands, you know, it's moments like that that I gave up so much of my time free to allow kids to try and play football and follow the dreams. And those two Brummies yesterday followed the dreams by scoring a goal apiece for England in a 6-2 demolition of Iran.
Yeah, well, I mean, for Birmingham and the Midlands, it's a great achievement. Two young players scoring in World Cups, and a result. I think that's it. I would imagine that would have been the highest first round England's ever achieved. Was it 6-2? Disappointed that they conceded
Panama,
two,
didn't we? We beat Panama 6-1 4 years ago. Yeah.
Right. So that's how much I've got interested in the World Cup. So, you know, I used to be like any other guy playing football, and as a kid, I would know everything about majority of teams. But like I said, this one seems a bit like a downer for me.
But I think the older you get, it's slightly different as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because when you're a kid, you remember all these facts, and if you ask me something,
Christmas
what happened,
and all them type of things, you know, it's not the same as when you were young, when you're a young kid. And so you're right, I agree 100% with you there.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember every FA Cup final in the 70s. I couldn't tell you who was in the FA Cup final in the 2000s and the 2010s to 20, and I think that kind of interest diminishes over a period of time. I think football is the greatest when you're about between 7 and 12, I think, and you can remember it just as though it was yesterday and the World Cups. Book corner
I
and
don't know.
so.
I still had that feeling for it. It's only these last 3 years,
Mm,
with the wokeness to it, what's really put me off it.
yeah,
You know, I don't even I don't watch it until it kicks off,
yeah.
and I do not listen to any of them because it's just they're saying what the TV companies have wanted them to say. You know,
Yeah, we're
so
going to be talking about the World Cup and certain things a little bit later in the podcast in topics of the week because there are one or two little points that I want to talk about. But Book Corner in association with myfootballbooks.com, Andy always sends us a recommendation, and this week it's Blood on a Crossbar by Reese Richards. And Reese has written a beautiful book and a wonderful cover of the book, and it's about the 1978 World Cup finals and how politicised it was. This one looks as though it's going to run it a close second, but the 1978, I think we have mentioned it before on the podcast, but as a kid, I was 13 at the time, and I would say it was the most wonderful World Cup that I've seen. Now,
the
when you
ticker
look at
tape World Cup.
yeah, when you look at some of the games, and then you replay them, okay, possibly they wasn't the greatest, some of those games, but it's the way that the World Cup made you
Yeah, but is
feel.
that the TV? I mean, like TV coverage now is
Oh,
a lot. When you
yeah,
go back to old
absolutely.
TV coverage, it's like when we used to see the black white coverage. It was like slow, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, and it looks slower, not slower, but it looks slow compared to what when you look at 5 or 6 years ago. But even the early part of the Premier League doesn't look over quick or up to date type of thing, does it?
No, I think you're right. Modern technology does put a different slant on the game. I mean, you're watching it now in HD and in 4UK or whatever it is these days with certain people watching broadcasts, and everything is for the fan now, and the fans' enjoyment sitting back home and watching it, which back in those days, of course, England played in 1977, didn't they? Memory serves me right, in Buenos Aires. I think we drew 1-1, and it was the first game that we watched via satellite. Do you remember that?
Not no,
I've got
no.
no
I
idea.
don't.
Trevor Cherry scored. We drew with Argentina 1-1, and it definitely was via satellite. But again, the memory banks start to erode over the period of time because it was a long time ago. But I'll never forget, as you said, T, the ticker tape reception, particularly in the final. They did it for all the games with Argentina, but that game in particular, when they beat Holland in the final, it was unbelievable. You would almost have had to, these days, they'd have cleared the pitch. They'd have got a big bloody Hoover on the pitch, wouldn't they? And
Yeah,
cleared it. But in those days, it was fabulous.
I mean, Kempes came to light, as you know, scored some great goals. The Dutch scored some absolutely fantastic Powell drivers from
Yeah,
35 and 40 yards. And little Archie Gemble scored one of the goals of one of the great goals of all time in the World Cup for Scotland against Holland.
it was superb, wasn't it? Scotland
It
were
was a
already
great
out,
goal.
wasn't they, at that time?
Yeah, unbelievable.
And did they beat Holland 3-2
They beat
in?
Holland 3-2.
Mm,
And if they'd have played half as well
yeah,
in the previous two games, they
yeah,
qualified.
yeah.
Because Holland had they've always had some good Scotland's always had some good players.
Absolutely. I mean,
Years gone by, they've had some great players.
it was like we're on the march with Ali's army, wasn't it? It was Ali McLeod that was the manager, and
That's right.
and you're right, they had some brilliant players, but they got done in one game by, I think it was two Kubilas free kicks, wasn't they? Where
Yes,
he
that's right.
bent them
Yes.
with his outside of his foot, and I remember taking a Wembley trophy over the park and trying to do the same thing. But
We've all done that, Gabby.
sorry.
We've all done that.
We absolutely have, and that's what football is about, watching players and trying to do things that they've just done and what
Emulate
you've
it.
seen.
Emulate it. Is it emulate it?
Emulate it, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. T. We all need heroes to look up to. While we're just we just moved on from the magic moments, but I watched the first half of France, and Kylian Mbappe has produced some moments of sublime magic, hasn't he? What a player he is! Probably the world's greatest player at this present moment in time.
I don't think he is no different him, than what Bale was, because he's powerhouse as well as, you know what I mean?
I think,
Great technique, don't get me
yeah,
wrong, but when you look at him and Messi, probably Ronaldo, all different types of players, even Ronaldo from Messi.
oh,
But Mbappe, the pace he can run with the ball is as quick with the ball as is without the ball. I know in general it wouldn't be, but he looks it and he still can run with pace. He still does his opposition and leaves them for dead, doesn't he?
I would say personally, from what I've seen, in recent years, I would put Messi as the greatest of recent times, and I'd put Mbappe next to him. I think Mbappe.
I mean, I've always liked Ronaldo. Messi, I prefer Messi to Ronaldo, but I've always liked Ronaldo. No, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, absolutely, great player.
Different types of player. But if you said to me who was best, Messi or Maradona, I'd go with Maradona every day.
And I would, yeah. I mean,
because the things he could do with the ball, Maradona, were unbelievable.
I mean that what was it? One of the finals that he was doing the warm up. Was it next to Curran?
Yeah.
Life is life. It was just mercurial. Maradona, I would say the greatest in my lifetime. I think he was just incredible. But when I say in recent times, I mean like the last, say, 10, 15 years with Maradona.
I'd always go
Messi.
with George best. But I mean, how can you leave Cruyff out? How can you leave? I mean, when you put him with Zidane, and for a midfield player and a guy that size,
yeah,
his technical touch was unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been lucky to see some absolutely world great players, haven't we?
Absolutely, yeah. And we've all got our favourites.
I mean, Ronaldo, the Brazilian Ronaldo, Rivellino for me.
Yeah.
Socrates, not Tosta, he was a midfield player.
Well, we had Zico as well in '82.
It means some absolutely. I mean, love him or hate him, Platini, absolutely
magical player,
absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah.
We've seen some great world players. We have.
Absolutely, and Blood on a Crossbar by Reece Richards, the story of the 1978 World Cup finals, and we've seen some fantastic players during that World Cup. Roy Kavanagh has sent me a wonderful little book, and it's the first championship of the Busby Babes, and he's written about the 1955-56 season when the Busby Babes literally won their first championship. So I'm looking forward to tucking into to that book, TC. The Busby Babes, while we're talking about magical players, I mean, what a team, arguably the greatest English team of all time.
Well, I didn't really see him. I never saw really Duncan Edwards. I mean, when did he die, Duncan? When did he play? 50?
It was 1958.
58. I was born in 55.
Yeah.
So I didn't really see him play, but obviously when the great players talk about Duncan Edwards being a great player and the Man United team possibly being going to be one of the greatest teams of our country, but if I've got to go, whether I like him or whether I don't like him, Leeds United was the best team I'd seen.
Again, a wonderful team, and that leads me nicely into my final pick of the trilogy this week. Revy's Plan for Leeds United, Summer of '63 by Gary Edwards. I'll be doing a podcast with Gary shortly to talk about this book. I've started reading it. It's an absolute cracker. There's lots of input from fans that was there at the time with iconic moments in the development of Leeds United Football Club, because for all intents and purposes, and for, I'm not a lover of Don Revie as England manager, but when you read about Don Revie and you look at what Don Revie did with Leeds United, you have to put him there as one of the greatest managers in club football, and rightly has a statue outside Elland Road of him, as does Billy Bremner. What a player he
Well,
was, Billy
when
Bremner.
you look,
Yeah,
what they should have won is incredible.
yeah, absolutely.
As an England manager, it was a failure. But
Yeah, it was.
at league level,
Mm.
he could have gone down as one of the greatest of all time, really, when you think about it.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, they didn't win the European Cup, but that team should have won it two or three times, and it should have won about 4 more league titles, more league cups, and more FA Cups. It was such a great team.
The only thing is with that Leeds team, and this is why you can never compare, because it was a different time, and I'm not saying that teams today are any better or any worse. And my opinion is Leeds United are the greatest British team that I've seen play football. I think they'd wipe the floor with any team that I've seen them seen since.
You can't compare.
You can't.
But you can't compare
because they only had a squad of 14, maybe 15, 16 players. As you say, T, they were going for the treble every season.
Season, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. They were playing over 60 games.
Could have done it.
Absolutely,
yeah. 3 times.
Yeah, they could have. Yeah, they were very, very close and cheated out on a number of occasions, particularly in Europe. But when you're looking at the modern, and this is where I'm going, why you can't compare. In the modern age, you finish 4th in the Premier League, you're in the Champions League. Back in Leeds' day, you had to win the league to go into the European Cup.
They do have everything in the favour, the pitches, squad depth.
Absolutely.
The rest, because what anybody says, they get twice as much rest and what. I mean, the players don't train like the players did back then with like Bremner and like in my era, because it was a lot of hill running. It's more science-based training nowadays, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, they're using the technology which wasn't available to you guys back in your day. But in the League Cup, Leeds United played their first team. In the FA Cup, Leeds United played their first team. They played their first team whenever they could in all competitions, and that's why, for me, you can never compare, because these days, Manchester City, for instance, have got 2 teams full of internationals, and they rotate them and keep them fresh. But it is a fantastic read, Summer of '63 by Gary Edwards, and I will be making a podcast with Gary, and I'm very much looking forward to talking to him about his wonderful book, Summer of '63, Revy's Plan for Leeds United. Strange but true, T. I'm just going to put my glasses on here because my writing is a little bit small. Keeper Rudy Hidden played 20 times for Austria from May 1928 before moving to play in France and becoming naturalised in that country. Returning to Vienna, Hidden had a leg amputated in 1968, but was refused a state pension by the Austrians on the grounds that he was now a foreigner. That's bad luck, isn't it?
It just shows you how governments can be to the own citizens at times.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's never changed, because choose where you are. All countries have foreigners and illegal immigrants going into the country, but when you fall on hard times and you go back to your own country, to do that, because obviously football is a job where especially foreign players, they do like to play in other countries where the English or the British have never really done it. I mean, some players have done it, don't get me wrong, but in general, you get far more foreign players coming to play in other countries, not just in England, in other countries, than you get the British players going out playing in, even though there's a few more go now, but we've never been great travellers, have we?
Absolutely, but in terms of Rudy Hidden, played 20 times for Austria. I mean, clearly he gave a lot of himself to his country of birth, but when he naturalised as becoming a French citizen, coming back after a leg amputation, couldn't receive a state pension. I do think that's taking it a little bit too far.
Too far, yeah.
Star of the 70s, T. We're putting Duncan McKenzie into the vault this week. Do you know where he was born, Duncan?
Grimsby.
Yes, you're absolutely spot on.
I told you I used to be shit hot with football. No phones in my days.
You were shit hot at football, T.
I'm on about players that I used to know everything about the grounds, the size of the pitches, and everything. You know, what colours they played in home and away, what player were this and what player were that. You didn't think I would know that one, would you?
No, I thought I'd just test you. What was his date of birth? Do you know?
Well, now then, I'm 68, so he's going to be about 71, 72. So he's going to be around about 50.
Absolutely, 1950 he was born.
Not bad. Well, you can't give me that in a sense because I know he's about 4 years older than me.
10th of June 1950, born in Grimsby. In 1969.
Nice bloke. By the way, a very educated bloke, him, you know.
I've never met Duncan. I'd like to do a Legends of the 70s podcast.
He's about 9 O levels, and about 3 or 4 or 5 A levels.
Blimey. I mean, there is a book, isn't there, The Last Fancy Dan? We'll put it in the book corner next week and we'll talk about that. But he had a great career. He had a lot of clubs. In fact, he had more clubs than you, T.
Yeah.
In 60.
You see, the thing we do, technically, great player.
Yeah.
But you know, the British coaches, you know, all they look at is the physical side of it.
Yeah.
You know, if he'd have been allowed to go and play, just express himself. You know, you get other players around what can do the other things, and let him try and create it. Playing in average teams is always going to he's not going to struggle, but he's always going to be the one what's going to get criticised. Put him in a great team. Put him in that Leeds United team with Brendan and them. He'd have looked a superstar.
Which we're going to go.
Or into Liverpool's team when they were at the peak. He'd have been a superstar.
Absolutely.
In fact, Peter Colmack went from Forest to Liverpool.
Yes.
If it had been Duncan, McKenzie, he would have been a superstar at Liverpool.
Absolutely. He joined Nottingham Forest in 69, so he was 19 when he joined Forest. Stayed there till 1974, but in the early days, he was loaned out to Mansfield for a couple of 69 to 17, 72, 73. 10 appearances, 3 goals, 6 appearances, 2 goals. So he's a youngster. He was loaned out. He then played for Forest 111 times. These are just league games, scoring 41 goals. And infamously was involved literally in the game that involved Newcastle versus Nottingham Forest in 74. Yeah, where Duncan he was the one that got the penalty. Pat Howard says that Duncan run into him. Duncan will probably have a different opinion, but it did result in Pat being sent off. A crowd invasion. The game was replayed, although many argue that the game should have been given to Nottingham Forest, or the game should have been played at Nottingham Forest, but it was replayed at Goodison Park, 0-0, and then Malcolm MacDonald scored the winning goal. But Duncan McKenzie, that was his time at Nottingham Forest, moved to Leeds United. Cloughy took him there in 1974 to 76. 66 games, 27 goals. He scored quite a lot of goals for games at Leeds United.
Great player, Duncan, you know. Yeah. Absolutely. Technically great player he was. You know, but just one of those players, Cloughie left, and then obviously because Cloughie bought him, the manager didn't really fancy him. He goes to Everton and goes and signs for a guy called Gordon Lee. That was never going to happen. That never going to work for him. That with Gordon Lee, not that type of manager.
I got an idea without researching. I got an idea. Billy Bingham bought him and then got the sack, and Gordon Lee inherited him. And I think that's where it went wrong because
you're right. But Bingham did buy him.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to say is that Everton,
Yeah,
with Gordon Lee, Lee comes in, don't want to play him.
No.
Bingham did buy him. 100% right there. Yes.
SRBMedia.